All right, welcome back to playing Greyhack the way the developers intended. Last time we just did a credentials mission. We did the tutorial. Now we're going to look at completing a slightly more difficult mission. We just hit level 1, and so because of that, we're going to try a more complicated mission. We're going to do a get remote file. The client wants to get a file from the victim. Interesting. Let's go ahead and start this mission. Notice that the payout was $440. That's twice as much as the previous mission. So as the missions get more difficult, they become more rewarding. So we've accepted the mission. We can see some details. The client wants you to enter a remote machine and get a file that contains important information for him. The public IP of the victim is given here, and the local IP where the file is located is also given. And then the path will be, we want this sales report. Somebody, a nefarious actor of some kind, wants this sales report binary file. So let's start as we did with the tutorial and the credentials mission. Let's do nmap. What's going on with this machine or with this network here? Okay, so we're going to need potentially multiple hops. That is good to know. The public IP of the victim is shown here. We can see that all of these ports point to 1.2, and the computer we need to access is on a completely different machine in the network. So we know that this is already going to be slightly more complex. That's fine. We can still make it happen. All right. Well, first things first, let's try to gain access to the network itself. Let's get in somewhere. A good place to start usually is with SSH. Why not? We can search for exploits, SSH, and then the version that we want to look at is 104 in our case. We search for that. All right, we have a lot of options. I'm going to look specifically at any of these that say shell. A shell will allow us to more or less log in to that machine and then sort of move around inside of the network from that machine. Because Nmap doesn't have any forwarded ports, we cannot touch this computer. There's no connection to this computer. So we have to get into the network first. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's go ahead and get a shell exploit. All right, we have a couple different options. We see we have a need for a root user logged in. That would give us guest, which is not the best. We'll keep that in mind. Moving on. We have a non-root user shell with a minimum number of registered users on the computer as 1. That's perfect. If I remember correctly, the number of users registered considers root. And if that's not the case, NPC computers almost always, or definitely always, have one other user. So for single player or NPC missions, this one should be pretty darn good. I'm going to keep that in mind. We're going to look for a root shell just because, but otherwise this will be the one that we will be choosing. Let's go ahead and take a look. This one will inject passwords. That could be helpful if we don't know a user's password. We don't need to do that quite yet. All right, so we have a lot of password changes, and then we have this shell. So let's go ahead and try this shell piece. I'm going to, again, I like to download the source code. So I'm going to download that in my downloads, and you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put another folder just for better organization. I'm going to say that this one's going to be libssh, and then the version would be 104. So I'm going to do 104, and then we're going to save it inside of here. Very cool. So now let's go ahead and try libssh 104. Oh wait, that's our source file. So actually, code editor. Now let's go ahead and build this in libssh. We're going to drop the src extension. And then let's go ahead and try running this file. What sort of usage does it require? It requires the IP and port. So let's go ahead and do that now. The IP, this one here, and the port will be from nmap earlier, libssh. That's what we have an exploit for. So we're going to specify that port. And again, we're going to keep some attention on this admin monitor. All right, so we've logged in as this user. We don't know this user's password, so that a root password could be helpful. We know the root password is stored in a file that we can retrieve. So let's go ahead and take a look. lsla/etc. This is the folder that contains the password file that is readable by guest. Owned by guest, and then because of the permissions here, it is readable by guest. The way to read this is we have read, write, and then this hyphen. That's execute goes there. So if it's a program, it'll say X. Or if it's a program and you have permission to run it, it'll say X. So for root, or sorry, for owner, that would be this one here. So for the owner, they have read and write permissions. For guest, not guest, for group, they have read permissions. They don't have write or execute permissions. And then everybody else, for example, guest, has nothing. Thankfully, we do have read permissions, so we should be able to read this file or even download this file. So I'm going to type cat etc password, and that's going to give us this content. I want the root password because that'll be helpful later. That's shared on every machine, remember. So I'm going to copy this password here, and then I'm going to open up a notepad. We have this notepad here. Let's go ahead and close that and open up a new one. We're going to paste this, and I'm going to save this into downloads, passwords, and now we can decipher that program. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from this remote computer, and now let's go ahead and lsla. We can see passwords is here, so I'm going to run decipher and then passwords. And then I'll be back when this program completes. Okay, so now we have the root password. Amazing. Okay, new file. Let's just do mission notes. And we have root password. We're going to save that there. We know that the IP address of the network we're targeting is this. So let's do WAN. That's the wide access network. WAN IP, this one here. Target LAN will be this computer here. And then our starting exploit will be, what command did we run? Let's go ahead and do this. So that would be our starting exploit. So these are our notes. This will help us sort of be organized as we do this mission because as mentioned earlier, it is a little bit more complex. All right, so we're back inside the network. If we ls, we can see config folder. Let's go ahead and grab email credentials. This could be quite helpful for later in case we need to email another employee. So let's go cd config ls. We can cat mail.txt, and we can see this this email here. So we're going to edit our original mail. Actually, did that copy correctly? I don't think it did. Permission denied, can't save. Oh, right, because we downloaded the file, so it's technically owned by a different user, so we'd have to use sudo to modify that. That's fine. Let's do sudo, and then we're going to just run File Explorer, and then we're going to ask for our sudo password, which in our case is test. We ran out of files. That's fine. Let's go ahead and close this one here. So now you can see where the money is important, because you need money to buy RAM, and you need RAM to have a sort of better experience. All right, let's navigate to our test user. We were operating out of the downloads folder. Now let's go ahead and go to mail. No RAM. Let's close this terminal here. This is getting tedious. I could close the email. We are taking notes, so I will do that actually. All right, open mail. We paste the new one that we want to decipher, and then we're going to go ahead and exit here. Actually, we can close our browser for now as well. That'll save us additional. And then I'm going to open up another terminal to have this crack while I continue to do things. Let's go back on that machine. And then in this other terminal, we're going to change directories. So cd downloads. And then we're going to do decipher mail.txt. And that's going to run for a little while. While that's running, let's go ahead and do SCP. We're going to move up a couple different files. Now we can do this in a couple different ways. You can do SCP, or you can do like File Explorer. You can just copy the files between the two different windows. So I'm going to use File Explorer. I'm going to go to our bin where we have Nmap somewhere. We have Nmap here. So let's go ahead and copy Nmap over to this machine. And now I can type Nmap. What IP? We want this one here. So let's do Nmap this IP. Okay, we can see that SSH is open. We got pretty lucky there. If SSH wasn't open, we'd have to work with more. So SSH is open. So we can SSH to this machine as root, which will give us the best permissions. And then we can download the file that we want in that way. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's do this password here. We're going to SSH root at password, and we're going to specify this machine here. And bam, we are in. The administrator is still offline. That's very, very good. I type File Explorer, and let's go ahead and let's go back to our email because we need to know what file that we want. It's the sales report bin, right? So let's go ahead and change directories. Home, and then we need this user here, and then the sales report. This is what we want. So let's go back to our test users downloads, and let's move this sales report over and download this file to our own machine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reply to this email. We're going to attach a file, downloads, and then we're going to specify the sales report bin, and then we're going to send that. And there you go. Customer satisfied with the job. There's been an adjustment to our account. Amazing. So that is mission complete. You can exit these machines. You no longer need these windows open. And that is a slightly more complicated mission complete. Thanks for watching, and happy hacking.